Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we return to September of 1982 for the last Marvel issue in the third volume of that omnibus series that we've been repeating over and over and over again. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. The issue we're talking about this time is Marvel issue number 67, entitled The Darker. Now this is again written by David Michelinie. It has original art, or what do they call it, layouts, by Ron Friends with finishes by Tom Palmer. Very much like we had the breakdowns by Walt Simonson with Tom Palmer finishing some stuff in another recent issue. Now, this is a story that you can find in the pages of Star Wars Omnibus A Long Time Ago, Volume 3. And that's the last time you're going to have to hear me say this, because this is the last story in this volume. We next move on to Volume 4 with a two-part Mandalorian-focused storyline. So, Omnibus Volume 3, this is it. This is the last one, and a weird note to end this one on, quite frankly. The idea here is that Luke has just returned from Behemoth. How do we know this? Because they flat out say it. C-3PO says, as Luke says, "Come on guys, Leia's got new intelligence information that might hold the key we need, the key to rescuing Han Solo." And C-3PO runs behind him and says, up here in the corner, "Are you quite certain you're up to such an adventure, Master Luke? After all, you just now returned from that harrowing episode on Behemoth. So why, with this volume of the Omnibus, as you heard me mentioned in the annual number 2 coverage here, why would it go from the Water Bandits on Behemoth to annual number 2, Shadeshine on Ventuine, and then to this story? It makes no logical sense whatsoever, and this issue is one released in September of 1982. The annual was released in July, so even that doesn't make sense. But, alas, I suppose I digress. Maybe they're thinking that the annual was released in December, which is when it was supposed to be taken off shelves, and they were looking at the January date up here on the top and thinking that this must have been the one to come next, that somebody wasn't really researching how it should fit together. They were just trying to go by the take me off the shelves because I'm too darn old dates. I don't know. Now, what Leia has figured out, as she explains after mentioning blah, 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 is how we got the information. Memorial services for Lieutenant Hammertree will be held tomorrow. Yes, L-E-F-T-E-N-A-N-T. Are you understanding this is first being released in the United States? It's Lieutenant in the United States. Thank you. Suffice to say, she begins with that and then says, so to summarize, we've learned that one of the other bounty hunters involved in the trapping of Han Solo was in league with Boba Fett, but was cut out of the reward when Fett took Captain Solo from Cloud City. Interesting twist. It seems reasonable then to assume that this hunter could be somewhat bitter about the situation and might be willing for a price to tell us where Fett is hiding until his rendezvous with Jabba the Hutt. So apparently right now, it's not time for Fett to go to Jabba's palace, so that tries to at least somewhat explain why it is that they'd still be looking for him instead of just looking on Tatooine at Jabba's palace. She points out 3, and they are named correctly here. We have Dengar, IG-88, and Bosk, reptilian monarch of the Quotil system. Interesting. But while they're getting this briefing, the Hoojibs and R2-D2 are running into something where they hear a distress call. The distress call simply says, "Help! Please, help me!" And R2-D2 hears this, and for one of the few times ever in any Star Wars publication, we get R2-D2's thoughts. These little green boxes down here at the bottom. R2-D2 thinks, input, audio entreaty, human range, desperation, nuance, prescribed action, alert companions, probable outcome, admonition to stop hearing things, projected accuracy of peer judgment, 94%. Conclusion, what the heck? Literally, that's the conclusion for R2-D2. What the heck? Kind of shows his personality. And he goes wandering off to find the source of this plea for help. Pliff knows about this area, says it's bad news. It is bad juju. The Hoojibs don't even go there, but to help a friend, they will. So these telepathic Hoojibs go and get help from C-3PO, who winds up getting help from Chewbacca, who's not really all that happy to go because he's wanting to just get out of there to go help Han, but it's going to be hours until they can actually lift off. And they go and find essentially a force field that they have to walk through. And the force field repels things of high emotion, dark emotion. So since Chewbacca is somewhat annoyed, it's harder for him to get through than the droids and the Hoojibs, who just kind of walk right on through there. What they find inside is that R2-D2 has been taken apart and is caught up in sort of a spiderweb, viney-looking thing, because there is a creature, a being in there known as the Darker, or as I like to refer to him, Star Wars version of Mumra, the ever-living. Yeah, if you're not a Thundercats fan, then don't worry about it. Suffice to say, it's this being who says he's made up of all these dark emotions. The Arbrins, the people who had originally lived on the planet, set up the crystal caves and everything, set up this big city that is now abandoned beneath the caves and everything. They use their superior technology to withdraw the dark emotions from themselves, only to realize that, yes, they could remove them and make themselves more peaceful, more benevolent, but they couldn't destroy them. They coalesced into this being called the Darker. And the Darker is now trying to escape. The problem is there's that energy field around it. And his thought is that if he can take apart R2-D2, he can probably find a way within R2-D2's more modern technology to break through that field that was created by earlier Arbrin technology. And he's trying to get the others out of the way so that he can effectively do that. Only, what winds up happening is, of course, a battle ensues. It's mainly Chewbacca chasing down the droids because the Darker plays into his dark emotions and causes him to go after them. But C-3PO reads through some old text, realizes what the truth is, goes, puts R2-D2 back together while avoiding Chewbacca, and they realize that, no, what's really true is that the Darker is not that he can't leave because he's full of dark emotion, it's that it's designed to destroy him if he tries to leave. So it's not just, oh, well, it's hard for me to get through, so I need help. It's, if that thing doesn't come down, I'm screwed, I'm trapped forever. So Chewbacca fights him, grabs him, and throws his Mum-Ra-esque butt, after some distraction from the Hoojibs, up into, boom, the shield. And he is destroyed. With that the case, things start to fall apart, as they often do when something mystic is destroyed in an old temple. I mean, haven't you seen the Indiana Jones movies? And they race to get the heck out of there, and they come out with Luke saying, hey, it's time to leave, your little vacation is over, at which point C-3PO is thinking, what vacation? You know what we just went through? It's a quick little story, a goofy little story, a little more fantasy than hard sci-fi. But we see more hard sci-fi recently with stuff like the Water Bandits. What gets me about this, though, and this is going, it's not even just the idea of, well, they took out their dark emotions and it became a living being. Okay, we see that in sci-fi from time to time. It's not the somehow C-3PO put R2-D2 back together when he was taken into many different pieces before Chewbacca could find them thing. That's kind of unbelievable, but okay. And it's not even the fact that we got to see what was going on in R2-D2's head, and it wasn't logic so much as it was like personality, because we have seen him with personality before. What gets me about this is that the Hoojibs are telepathic. And the Darker here, when he explains what is going on, he says, let's see, then your alliance arrived, and I sensed that they possessed the technology that could be used to short-circuit the Force screen. And thus I worked for months to push through a mental message, the same help me plea that brought your despair or your repair droid running. Okay. Unless he's saying it is a mental push from him, but it comes out as auditory words. And unless we can believe the same thing about the Hoojibs, how in the hell did R2-D2 and C-3PO hear telepathy? They have no brains. They're not biological. They have no minds. They have computer chips and such. So how is it that R2 hears a telepathic plea at the beginning from the Darker, and how is it that the Hoojibs are able to communicate at all with the droids? That's been something that bothers me throughout the Marvel series. We just kind of have to assume that once they say they're telepathic, they're really not the way they're treated. They're treated as if they're just speaking out loud. Maybe it's like they speak a sort of a gibberish, and to most people it's backed up by telepathy, so they're able to understand what the gibberish means, because it's like an animal language, and maybe C-3PO can just translate the animal language without needing the telepathy here. But the idea here that you have telepathic communication being heard by droids really kind of stretches credulity a bit. Though, here I am talking about that in a story that has a being made up of all the nasty emotions of a race that fled the planet after leaving it behind, who refused to destroy the negative emotions. Why? Because they felt it might still be a part of them and they didn't want to destroy it. Just, leave it behind on a planet to be buried alive for years and years and years and years and years and years. Not the best of stories. But a quick little filler story, and it sets up the idea that they've got new intel about the bounty hunter. Maybe they'll be able to find a way to get information from one of these bounty hunters to track down Boba Fett, thereby tracking down Han Solo. It's the first real hint of promise we've gotten in the Marvel series that maybe they can rescue Han. Though, of course, they won't till Return of the Jedi. But at this point in the comic series, Return of the Jedi has not been released in theaters yet, so everybody's building up their anticipation. So, this quick little story, The Darker, last in Omnibus Volume 3, number 67 of the Marvel series. And yes, I did just have to look. Is this an essential read? Absolutely not. Not one possible bit. Again, it's kind of like the Water Bandits, or not the Water Bandits. When we looked at the Golroth Never Forgets and the Water Bandits, it's kind of like if we looked at the Golroth Never Forgets issue and just read the first 3 pages to get Luke's trial. That's really all you need. Really all you need out of this is that first few pages of, hey, here's our idea, we're going after these 3 bounty hunters to try to find information on Han. You know, if you know that, you really don't need this issue otherwise at all. A weird story and an odd note to end Omnibus 3 on, though it makes sense that they'll pick up where they pick up for Omnibus 4. We'll check out that in an upcoming episode. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.